Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon. My name is Sheikh Muhammad Saifuddin bin Sheikh Muhammad Saleh from the Center for Science and Environment Studies, Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia, IKIM. And you are joining me in the latest episode of Man and Nature, produced by Hajah Mazlina Ismail. Ladies and gentlemen, our approach for today is slightly different from usual. In previous episodes, I'm joined by Hajah Mazlina as moderator, where she would pose questions to me on topics chosen for our discussion. But today, inshallah, things are a bit different. I will undertake the task as moderator because joining me in this episode today is a special guest who will be speaking on a very important topic, that is nature-based energy from biomass. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to our guest today. Alhamdulillah, we are privileged to have with us Associate Professor Dr. Zul Ilham bin Zulkifli Lubis, who is the Deputy Director, Center for Civilizational Dialogue, University Malaya, as well as an Associate Professor at the Institute of Biological Sciences, Faculty of Science, University Malaya. Welcome, Dr. Zul, to the program. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Dr. Sheikh, Radio IKIM, Hajah Mazlina. Thank you very much for having me today in the Man and Nature program. I think it's not too late for me to also wish to the listeners and viewers salam Aidilfitri, selamat Hari Raya Mak Aizai Batin, dan untuk it's also for Dr. Sheikh too.
Thank you, Dr. Zul. Selamat Hari Raya Aidil Fitri. Ma'azai batin to you too. Hope you have had an enjoyable Eid recently, and we hope that all our viewers are also still in the mood of Hari Raya Aidil Fitri. We are into our first week of Shawwal. Now, Dr. Zul, our topic is nature-based energy from biomass. There are a couple of big words there. Perhaps to start off our discussion, when we mention energy, I would imagine that most of us would probably think that electricity is generated from fossil fuel such as oil, gas, coal, or even obtained from renewable sources like solar energy. And solar energy, as you know, is getting popular. Now, as an introduction, could you please explain more about nature-based energy production from biomass?
Thank you, Dr. Sheikh. So I think I will start to explain about biomass energy first as a start in comparison to the conventional energy that we are currently using in order to produce electricity. So currently our country, Malaysia, is producing its electricity, generating electricity from fossil fuel resources such as coal, natural gas as well as petroleum. So those are the non-renewable resources. So the one that we are talking about today, which is nature-based energy from biomass, is part of renewable energy, which is another types of energy that could be generated from a different type of resources. And in particular, today we will talk about biomass. And biomass could be complicated for those unfamiliar with the terms. But to make it easier to be understood, it is actually anything that results from photosynthesis, meaning whenever that you have plants, of course, trees and other plants like perennial grasses that grows by absorbing carbon dioxide and the sun through the process of photosynthesis, then we can term it as biomass. This also includes its residues and the byproducts of this biomass, such as what we could say as agricultural residues, waste, and also landfill gases. So, from biomass, you can generate electricity by burning it directly, like the way we use it traditionally, when we burn charcoal in order to cook or to provide heat. Then it's also biomass energy, but in the form of direct energy. On the other hand, You could also utilize biomass after processing it. Uh, and in this case, you could process it to become biogas or biofuels, which includes biodiesel as well as bioethanol. So it is said that if we manage the sustainable biomass properly, it could be a new carbon neutral resources for generating green energy for the country as well as for the region and globally.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Dr. Zul, because I think it's good to know, or it's good to start off our discussion with what we mean by biomass, because I think that's a term that many people have heard of, but perhaps not many people actually know what it is all about. Now, you mentioned just now that biomass is a form of green energy. And it seems that producing nature based energy from biomass is important to realize our country's aim to be a carbon neutral country by the year 2050. Now, 2050 is just under 30 years away. So, what do you think could be the main challenges in achieving this status of carbon neutral country by 2050?
So, Dr. Sheikh, as all of us know, our country aims to be carbon neutral by 2050. It has been stated like a national ambition to achieve carbon neutral by 2050. So there are, of course, a lot of challenges that uh, could be explained here. But then I would like to highlight the main challenges that I could simplify as three A's. Okay, three A's. So the first A is accessible. It is a challenge for us to have this biomass energy or green energy accessible to all. Why? Because in comparison to oil and gas is already an established resources of energy, meaning all the logistic and the transportation, all the supply chain in the ecosystem of fossil fuel based economy are already there, meaning that when you introduce some new form of energy such as biomass energy that we are talking today, then we sometimes don't have the proper components to fulfill the ecosystem in place. So the first challenge that I have mentioned just now is accessible. To make it accessible from where you plant it or from where you harvest it to the place you process it, as well as to the place where you want to generate electricity. So there are three components. First is the area of where you plant and harvest it. The second place is to transport it in order to process it if it needs processing, and later on in order to utilize it to generate electricity from it. So the first challenge is accessibility. The second A is affordability. It is clear that due to the establishment of oil and gas for hundred of years, so the price has been fair, and due to the proper investment throughout the years, so it has been made affordable. Not to say cheap, but affordable for everyone. But then again, in as a new entry, so normally in introduction of a new technology or a new resources, always there is a barrier of affordability that we have to overcome, and in that sense, affordability is a challenge for us for biomass energy in order to be utilized widely in this country and also in this region. And the third challenge, the in the three A's, is the acceptability of the community, because most of us would be reluctant to try new things because we have get used of using oil and gas for quite a while, and all our automobiles and all our transportation fleet are being powered by oil and gas. But then, in order for you to introduce new things from biomass, such as biofuel or biogas, you need some modification. You need to introduce new machines that might, again, related to the second A just now, affordability. You need to have a new system, new car, right? New transportation fleet. So there are a lot of challenges, but not to say that we could not overcome it if we really look into it. But that I would like to discuss today are the three A's. I repeat again: the accessibility, the affordability, as well as the acceptability towards the biomass energy.
Right. It looks like the three A's, accessibility, affordability, and also acceptability are actually interconnected, I would think. Each of the A actually is connected to the other A. But you
Yes,
sound very confident. You sound that as if inshallah, we'll be able to overcome these challenges in the next decade or so, so that we can achieve the target of becoming a carbon neutral country by 2050, inshallah.
inshallah.
Uh, inshallah. So, as you mentioned, biomass basically is sourced from plants that carry out photosynthesis, and therefore we can make the deduction that they are normally grown on land. Agriculture is also an important sector in our country. How is it? How best can we ensure that biomass does not compete for land and water with agriculture?
Yes, Dr. Sheikh, that is a very good concern and issues that have to be discussed whenever we would like to venture into biomass energy. This is due to the fact that, as I've mentioned earlier, biomass is practically grown through photosynthesis, meaning it needs land area, it needs water, which will also compete with agriculture. But the most important is that agriculture is to produce food. So in this matter, we already have a food versus fuel situation, right? So, but this is only real and true for traditional energy crops from the first generation of biomass. I didn't had the opportunity to explain about the generation of this biomass yet. But then the first biomass, the traditional energy crops such as palm oil from oil palm, sunflower oil, soybean oil, those oil, canola oil, those oils that we obtain from food crop, meaning you could also utilize it as a cooking oil. So these are the first generation. So later on, scientists and researchers moved to the second generation of the biomass resources, which are the waste and agricultural residues, and also lignocellulosic materials. To simply put it forward, sugars from plants, meaning we extract from the residues, not from the food crop. So that is the second generation. But now we already have third generation of biomass energy resources, which are microalgae and also algae like fungus, which are not grown on land. So you could actually grow it in bioreactors. So practically the third generation that we are currently also looking at it in University Malaya now is to grow it in bioreactors so that it will become a landless biomass resources, meaning it doesn't utilize the productive land that we can actually use for agriculture, because there is no point of debating which energy to use if we couldn't put if we couldn't put food on the table. Because we of course, in the hierarchy of needs, of course you need food in order to survive first. Only later we can talk about sustainability or having a good sustainable energy, right? But then, so in this manner, when I'm talking about biomass energy, I'm not referring to the traditional energy crop, but more towards plants that could be grown on degraded land that is not productive for agriculture, arid lands, dry land. So those plants, and also the latest one, which could be grown in bioreactors and maybe perhaps vertically, so that we can reduce the space, as well as being equipped with a proper water treatment system, so that it could be recycled and not to be released to the environment. So when we talk about biomass energy, we are referring to the third generation that I've mentioned earlier, as well as maybe after this the fourth and the fifth generation that would come forward. That's what we are referring to here, Dr. Shea.
Right. So in essence, for the third generation of biomass, we are not really there's no really any competition for land and water with agriculture. And just interestingly, you mentioned about microalgae. Perhaps I think I'd like to do a bit of plugging here because IKIM last year published a book, Microalga Transgenic Issue dan Cabaran Islami, in which you also have a chapter in that book. We look at
Yes,
the
Dr.
issue
Shea.
of using microalgae as a source for carbon absorption, and also potentially as a source for energy as well. So now I also read recently, this is just an add-on. I also read recently that there's a company in the UK embarking on the project to use genetically engineered microalgae to absorb carbon in order to produce energy. So I think this is something that probably will be commonplace in the future. Although perhaps for many of us this may be something very new. Now moving on, Dr. Zul, if you look at the world today, the world has been very much dependent on carbon-based energy for so long for our economic activities. So, in your opinion, what can we do to ensure a smooth transition from a carbon-based energy to green-based energy?
Okay, Dr. Shea. Again, thank you for explaining about latest IKIM work on the book on transgenic microalgae. It is something of concern to be discussed, especially when it involves transgenic microalgae, which could have an effect to the environment if being released and not being properly monitored, right? But then again, in order for us to ensure good transition from fossil-based economy to green-based economy, of course, Alhamdulillah, I would say the first effort should come from the top, as we learn from other good cases. So Alhamdulillah, as I've said, in our country we already have an aim to be carbon neutral by 2050. An aim is good because when you have a destination, so you can work on towards achieving it. So first we must have an aim. So to have a good aim to be carbon neutral by 2050 is already good, and Alhamdulillah for our country, Malaysia. And later on, it must be followed by, of course, action plan, so that this aim could be materialized in a short time frame. 30 years is not that long, so the action plan has to be put forward now, and the work has to be done today. And the government should also encourage, incentivize the market, and mandating change, because the change from the top, as well as it will, because when we have a mandate or a direction from the top, then all the private sectors could rally behind and provide funding in order to fulfill the action plan. And later on, uh, it also has to be promoted to the whole society. And in this case, in Malaysia, we also have a bottom up approach. We have a lot of NGOs, we have a lot of research groups that are working in green, not to say particularly in biomass energy, but also other types of green energy. So people are asking to be part of it, and people are asking for more opportunity to have and utilize renewable energy or green energy as well as biomass energy. And our electricity production company, our national company, is also involved in this. And in this manner, they although we currently generate electricity by combustion of coal or natural gas, but then the emission are being used to grow microalgae, which could absorb the carbon dioxide as a carbon sink, so that the carbon could be trapped by the microalgae in the biomass, and later on that biomass could later be processed in order to produce energy or other products too. So not to say that we didn't have any action, but then again, it is still in an experimental phase and not in a large scale. But then it is not good for us to say that if we don't start at all. All the universities as well as research institute and private partners too, as well as our national companies, our GLCs, are working towards it and aim and providing plans in order for us together to achieve the carbon neutral aim by 2050, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Zul, for that explanation. Now, what you've mentioned, particularly in answering the previous question, you've been focusing on policymakers, the top-down approach, GLCs, universities, researchers. But another component or another important element in the whole equation is actually the community members. Now, as a member of the community who is not a researcher, who is not a scientist, who is not a policymaker, how can the public actually help in supporting this green energy that is derived from biomass?
Oh, good question, Dr. Sheikh, especially when University Malaya had just had our Citizen Science Week last week. So I also got to learn a lot from the Citizen Science Week. There are a few of us among the community that are actually doing their part in their own community at their own capacity in order to make this country more sustainable. And to mention that citizens have a crucial role in order to support the government effort in order to introduce or to make green energy as well as green economy being accepted by all. As I mentioned earlier, the last A, which is the acceptability. But then again, what we can do as a person is, of course, the low hanging fruit, the easiest that we could be do is not to change the whole society but to change ourselves first. Of course, we have to start with our behavior, and we can start small by reducing our load on electricity and to use the energy efficiently. When you are not it all includes basic things such as when you are leaving the room and nobody is in the room or in a particular area, then you have to switch off all the electrical appliances as well as unplug it so that there is no vampire usage of electricity, right? So if people are willing to make change on in their lifestyle, so it is seen, and there are one research that if the community itself would like to work towards it, then there is a high chance that any policy that is being introduced by the government could be materialized because it is being supported by the masses. And in addition, the government also provide a lot of opportunities, not only government but also universities and research institution as well as private company provide a lot of opportunity for education for all the public to learn and to know more about biomass energy. Of course, there is no one size fits all approach for citizens. So, but then it will also incur some cost, but then we will have to work together in order to achieve this, to materialize this. And I would say that the term is collaboration. So collaboration is vital in every part of society to contribute from individual level until let's say community, as well as to include private companies, development banks, as well as GLC and the government. So it takes us to have a good collaboration in this now connected world, so that it will have proper consequences from one action. So it could snowball into something bigger, and then later on maybe another part would have interest on it and keeps on funding it, so that we could materialize our aim in order to have a carbon neutral country, be it using biomass energy or other renewables that are definitely a good alternative in comparison to the current conventional energy that we are currently using. Dr. Sheikh.
Thank you. It sounds very interesting that what you mentioned. I can probably sum up with to three components: A, B, and C. A is awareness. The public needs education, also exposure to what the green energy is, so that they can understand how important it is towards mitigating problems like climate change. B, I think, is behavioral change, whereby you mentioned that we should start with ourselves. We should change ourselves first, before we aim for something bigger. So I think that is also something that we always repeat in this program, Man and Nature, that we have to start with ourselves and our family first, and then it can snowball to the community and to the nation at large. And C is collaboration, as you mentioned rightly. There needs to be collaboration involving all segments of the country, the community, the policymakers, the research industries, and all parties concerned has to work together in order to achieve the aim that we have set forth, that is to attain carbon-free status country by 2050. Now, perhaps we have come towards the end of our program for today. Maybe you have some concluding remarks to sum up our discussion for Man and Nature today.
Thank you, Dr. Sheh. I think I would like to summarize all the information in this short while that we have today. So first, to reiterate the three A's. So in order to introduce green energy, we need accessibility, affordability, as well as acceptability. And later on, Dr. Sheh also mentioned about ABC, which I agree. We must have awareness and we have to have a behavioral change, and the C is the collaboration among all. And I would like to add maybe D, A, B, C, D, so dialogue. So it is important for us to participate as well as to support dialogue in this matter, such as the program that we have today, because through this dialogue we can actually share information and also discuss and find opportunities, and then see what could we work together in order to achieve a mission or an objective, right? So in a dialogue, then there is no side, so we can always contribute together into a circle, if you could say. So participate and collaborate together in order for us, of course, inshallah, to make this world, I think it has been a cliche nowadays, to make this world a better place for all. But truthfully, it is us that have to initiate and work towards it together. Thank you, Dr. Sheikh. That's all
Right.
from me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zul.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I would like to highlight the fact that Islam has always stressed on a number of implementable concepts when it comes to sustainability, especially when it comes to the environmental sustainability. And one such concept is innovation. And I think what we've discussed today, as highlighted by Associate Professor Dr. Zul Ilham, is that we can use technological innovation based on scientific development. Uh, in our discussion, we discussed about using biomass to produce nature-based energy as a way for us to ensure that the environment and the natural world is not harmed. We
Dr.
are,
Sheikh, Dr.
yes,
Sheikh, if I may add a little bit, I
please,
suddenly got the point. So
please.
another motivation that we have in New Layer on working on this is from Surah Yasin ayat 8, the verse of 80, which part of the meaning is that we can have fire from green plant. So that is really questionable on how you could get fire from green plant, from fresh plants, right? So I believe that this biomass energy is part of it, because we are working towards having fire, not really literally fire, but then energy from green plants, Dr. Sheikh. So suddenly when you mentioned, sorry to
Yes,
interrupt.
yes, no problem. What you mentioned is true because we can get inspiration and also motivations from Quranic verses. That is the role of conducting tadabbur on the Quran. The Quran is not just for reading; it's also to be used as a source for inspiration. For researchers like you, perhaps they can trigger new innovations that can be very useful and practical for the world. So thank you very much, Dr. Zul Ilham, for this very valuable discussion. I would like to again express my sincerest appreciation and gratitude to you for being able to join me today, this afternoon in Men and Nature. Hopefully, we'll meet again on the air soon. And I'm sure that our discussion today has tremendously benefited our listeners. Hopefully, we can better understand the issue at hand in order to for us to move towards becoming a carbon neutral country by 2050, inshallah. Ladies and
Inshallah.
gentlemen, we have now come to the end of today's Man and Nature. We will be back again next week for another topic with another guest, inshallah. And again, thank you, Dr. Zul. Until we meet again, wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.